with Spirit of Matter here on a Soul Day and Soul Hour with the Sun in the first house in Libra and the Ascendant right on the Ascendant of the topic of today. So just quickly before I turn to the actual topic, which is the chart of Israel with the Ascendant in Libra and 23 degrees, and look how astrology works, but the timing is perfect when we want to discuss a topic. So the moon is in the 10th house in Leo. Mars is in the 27 degrees Libra, and the descendant is right with Aries in Aries. Okay, and Aries in Aries is indeed the topic for today. So that's pretty much what I'm going to cover. The midheaven is ruled by the moon that is in Libra. So without further ado, and I want to give a bit of a shout out to my international colleagues here, which is S.J. Anderson. And even though I do have, of course, the chart of Israel, he kind of brought it into attention. And sometimes when you look at the chart in a certain context, then you find out more things. So he kind of brought the topic on Twitter, and I want to thank him a lot. So he talked about the eclipses, and the eclipse in Libra being 21 degrees. That is just 2 degrees from the ascendant of Israel. That's applying to the ascendant of the state of Israel. And now, for me at first, because we had eclipses, and this is more the timestamp of the Yom Kippur in this 1973, the Chiron thing, which I think I discussed in another video. Then at first I was like, okay, we had eclipses. This is a global issue. And I will touch on why later. But then I noticed that if the ascendant is in 23 degrees, it means that Aries in Aries is crossing the descendant for Israel, and it's going to be emphasized in Rahu in an eclipse, and that makes it a bit more personal for the state of Israel. And this is why I'm making this video. All the while, I was kind of looking at the chart of my country in a bit of a different point of view. So yes, it has the descendants minutes away, degrees away from Spica, which is great in trade, eloquence. Venus, very close in the 10th house, in Cancer, which is also dignified. And the midheaven. The midheaven on 25 degrees Cancer, this is the degree of a fixed star called Procyon. And I mentioned Procyon when I talked about JFK's chart, who had midheaven and Saturn there, and he managed to avoid a nuclear war. And I was like, oh my God, this is a new perspective that I was not aware of before, because having a midheaven on Procyon basically means that the real reason that you are here is to reconcile and to achieve with peace something that other people would nuke for. Okay, so Israel has the potential, okay, to achieve peace in places where it seems it has the JFK sign. Okay, it's kind of like the JFK. If you think about the Cuban Missile Crisis, Israel has this timestamp in its natal chart where it's able to avoid nuclear disaster, and whenever this is triggered. Okay, it doesn't mean it's always going to be able to do so, but we understand why the world also supports Israel, perhaps for thinking that it can provide some nuclear balance or balance of power that can avoid a nuclear holocaust. But the sun is very close to a goal, which means Israel is undergoing tremendous mundane events that are not easy to handle. And now Uranus is basically a degree away from the sun of Israel. This tells us that we're only beginning to experience the transformation, because Uranus is now on the 22nd degree of the to kill or not to kill. We're seeing mass massacres. Okay, and I say that plurally for a reason. Okay, So the revolting powers are unfortunately very, very lethal, and on a mundane level, very difficult. And we are only beginning with the sun crossing Israel's sun and then crossing Al Gol mundanely. Okay, only for Uranus to arrive to Gemini and eventually have a Uranus, the first Uranus return for this new country. When Uranus arrives at 24 degrees Gemini, we have some time before that happens. I believe the United States comes before us, but we're going to experience something not too different from what the United States experienced on its Uranus return. We have the same sign for Uranus, and that is civil war. Okay, I made another episode about Uranus cycles in Israel a while ago. What the reason that I'm looking at this is another. One, right now we have Rao and Eris, which is the goddess of discordia, but also the goddess of representing marginalized societies. Yeah, on the descendant of Israel. This means that the partners for Israeli right now, what they require is not the Ubermensch as eugenics. Okay, as let's create the Jewish of the muscles and those phases of Zionism that we would all like to forget, because they were affected by eugenics. And eugenics is basically the quest for purifying the race. Okay, I need to say no more. This is not just Zionist and it is not just Nazis. It is also your medical health care. Why are children being taken from their parents instead of assisting their parents? If it takes a village to raise a child, why are people being isolated and blaming the parents for both not having children and for raising the child wrong, regardless of the gender of the parent? Okay, that is all to do with eugenics. Okay, why do the treatments for certain diseases are torturous rather than just to treat the disease? Okay, even when it comes to cancer, when it comes to many other crises that we have. Okay, if we discover and we know that if I want my dog to be healthy, and even if I want a golden retriever or a Labrador or a canine, I would want this dog to also be mixed with another breed of dogs so that its immune system will be healthy. Okay, and we know now, even with researchers, that when we put children closer to nature and playing with nature and playing outside, the immune system gets better, so they don't develop these allergies and life-risking immune system failures and sensitivities as much. Okay, and so when we travel and we meet people who live completely differently, think about the power of the Babylonian Empire, that wherever it came, yes, it was conquering, it was an empire, it had all the dark sides, but it sought not to overpower the intellect of the people that it conquered, but actually to learn from them and integrate it into the Babylonian egregore. So when we talk about traveling and being exposed to other places, to other cultures, basically learning from and integrating, this is done, but unfortunately it is done through exile in many cases, like the case of Maimonides, which I discussed on the episode on Maimonides. He was in exile, he was affected and affecting Sufi Muslim people, and now we have a lot of Sufi in our Judaism, that is by Maimonides, that we consider the pillars of Judaism, also in medicine. So and you can understand the importance of biodiversity to the immune system, to the spiritual enlightenment, to the strength of the people. It's actually by exposing ourselves to people, by traveling, that we open our mind, our nervous system becomes healthier, we can interpret communication better, because we understand that when one person says, I don't know, a table, they mean one thing, and when another says a table or a dining place, they mean lying on a mattress and eating together, depending on the location, the culture they are. So imagine political concepts. So with this, we get that this Eris, on the descendant of the state of Israel, is asking for us to go forward, not to go back. Aries in Aries is a lot about progress, okay? It has a more of a linear, it's Mars with more of a linear trajectory. Think about the Enlightenment, okay? Think about the Secularism. Think about the move from having a rabbi or an imam that interprets religion for you to having a secluded meditation where you interpret your own connection with God accordingly, or decide that you turn to other places for a sense of meaning and purpose, or a sense of connectedness, or a sense of seclusion if you need to be alone a bit. Then think about the reformations of Martin Luther. Okay, and I turn you to Dan Waits regarding the great trine and sextile aspects we're going to have with the outer planets, regardless of Aries in 2026. That was a part of Reformation in religion. We became more secular, but also more connected, because in traditional communities, you do what the imam says, what the rabbi says. You vote what they say, you do what they say. You don't think much. You allocate this thinking, say, no, this person has connection with God. Whatever they say is good. And we used to allocate this to leaders as well. And so with secularism came also, later it would be nationalism, but now we are becoming denationalized, because basically we went through a process of no longer allocating the connection with the divine, or the connection with science, or the connection with the sense of meaning and purpose to a leader. Okay, and so we understand that paradoxically, separation between any state-like, tribe-like institution and religion, that is what encourages inclusivity. Okay, if you cannot, like France, if you cannot wear, let's say, a hijab, then you cannot also wear like the spongy, the fluffy hats that Jews wear in a holiday. Then you cannot wear your Hindu necklace for the moon holidays. But what you can do is practice all of those religion, as long as you don't, like, you shut your mouth about it in the public sphere. Practice your religion, talk about your religion, practice your religion, share experiences from your religion, but do not give anything of religion sign in the public sphere. Okay, I'm not saying it's the best way to deal with that, but we are heading towards time that more and more people will understand that to keep my spiritual practice, I also need to respect others. And if I don't show off my, I don't know, Ganesha swastika or talisman or whatnot in public for all to see, then it means that other people won't try to enforce on me also things that I don't want. And everybody has a right to live regardless of the nationality and so on and so forth. So we also need to remember this. This is the spirit of the time we're going through right now. And so this is on the descendant of Israel. It's on political partners, but it's also what is asked for Israel to adopt from its seventh house, that is a part of Israel. Okay, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, you would see the sentence of without differing between race, gender, and religion. The word gender was there originally in 1949. Do you understand why Israel is still on the map? It's not because it is the Jewish state. It's because it is a part of the timestamp of the Enlightenment, in a way that even the United States was not as advanced, because it was 300 years ago, okay? Granting women rights and trans women rights without differing gender in its Declaration of Independence. That's why Israel survived that. And again, I'm referring you again to the MC on Procyon, and to Uranus in the ninth house. Okay, so liberation, traveling. Also technology and high tech, which Israel is known for. Mercury here is in the 10th house. But not all things are good. Yes, we also have the global pandemic of kidnapping children by the welfare, and it's a global pandemic of not housing people on time. And then, like, why do they destroy a village? We need to tend to housing on time to all people, regardless of sex, gender, and ability to work, which is very important, because this is something Israel is missing, and makes it very difficult for it. We also have this Mercury in the 10th degree on Aldebaran that granted Israel victorious achievements over a lot of overpowering. Okay, so this Mercury that is applying to sextile Pluto and trine Neptune give Israel this mythical sense that we can win forever. And I have to admit that indeed in those cases in 1973 and in 2023, in those cases where Israel supposedly was not winning, those cases were orchestrated. And I'm saying this from zero patriotism. Genuinely, there are actually footages of people who found the news updates and the design of the name of the swords of Iran a couple of hours. Okay, when they published them on Google, it was listed a couple of hours before the operation actually began. Okay, the war actually broke. So you must understand, and those things, that type of things, also on a documentary that I saw on the Yom Kippur, they didn't say much because they couldn't say much, and they silenced people for 50 years. It's a Chiron timestamp, but there was people who are describing that they came to the place where they take out the weapons and the vehicles, and it was closed, and one of the soldiers had to shoot the place, to open the place forcefully, to take stuff to go out. So it was orchestrated that people, it was not a bureaucratic mess. Okay, it was an orchestrated bureaucratic mess so that so that the IDF will not be able to present its winning operation. And even yesterday, it took a lot of time for the army to arrive. Once the army arrived, it began to do what the army does, and yes, Israel is indeed having this timestamp of being victorious. Aldebaran is also material victory; it's victorious on land, and this is the chart. Okay, it's not a patriotism, and it doesn't mean that when Israel is winning is always right. It just means that it gives a very strong timestamp of victory, sometimes by over being necessary on land and territory. Okay, so and with the sextile to Pluto, there is the inner psychological ability to maneuver around world leaders and world politics. Okay, because the sun, of course, it's affected by eclipses. Absolutely. But now I want you to turn to the Chiron here in Mars sign, Chiron in Scorpio, 21 degrees Scorpio, Chiron retrograde. Chiron retrograde in a natal chart of a person, it means that this person can no longer contain people who are weak. And this is a very, very dangerous point for Israel that it has to address. And I will tell you why. In a natal chart of a person, oh, here it is. In a natal chart of a person, it means that if you have Chiron retrograde, it means that you cannot contain those people that now need your mercy, and you just can't operate. You're having so much issues of your own that you cannot be there for people who need your help. And some people interpret it as in, oh, there are certain people who don't want to do anything for themselves and blah, 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 blah. But where this is appearing in Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars, but this is what is Mars in the country's charts is the soldiers and the army. And the big problem is to acknowledge veterans that were wounded because they're considered as weak, although they are containing a lot of information that we need to listen to, and they're being silenced. Okay, it's not it's something that happens in many countries, but here particularly we have Chiron here. And surprisingly enough, it was when Chiron was in Aries in 1973 and in 2023 on the Chiron return that we had two wars where it seemed like our army is no longer winning. How come Israel is surprised? She was not surprised. She was ready with the articles. Okay, there's something else going on here, but we must understand that when Chiron is actually on the other Mars sign, then we're seeming like we're not victorious. And again, I said with zero patriotism. You understand that what I am saying is not at all patriotic, because there was something that is hidden from us, is beyond even a government, where the whole agenda was orchestrated and people were left with no help, waiting for the army, and the trust is being broken in the army. Okay, and sometimes it's not necessarily the fault. It's not necessarily the fault of the army, because it's not that people don't want to do it. It's something is stopping, and it's coming probably from something external, more like the Schwab story. You'll have nothing and be happy, taking over real estate and stuff like that. But internally, Chiron in Scorpio is the Mars that is ruled by Scorpio. It's psychological crisis to do with war and psychological war. This also means that Israel doesn't really have a lot of oomph when it comes to psychological war. It doesn't mean that she doesn't do that. It just means that it's like how shall I say, this is not a stronger side for Israel. It doesn't mean that she doesn't do that. It means that what she thinks that she's effective in psychologically is not necessarily the point. It doesn't mean that she's not victorious. It just means that when it comes to being strategic, perhaps it's not what wins over the wars. And in some ways, strategic psychologically. Okay, Mars is strategic in other ways. Mars is in Leo, and Mars in Leo indeed is the visible Mars. So Israel is very known for the army. The picture of even the women that are in the train station or on the beach with their big guns. And as an Israeli, I've had cases where I was traveling the train or walking in some public place, and either was the guards or the soldiers, and they were sitting, and the gun was pointed at me with a very big, barrel like this, and that's just like, I was like, only in Israel do I feel completely calm when the barrel of a gun is pointed at me casually, and that is a very a visible scene for Israel. Okay, something that we're visibly known by. It's in the 11th house. So our army is known worldwide. It's also the fact that it's mandatory army service. This is also known worldwide. This Mars is having a sextile with Uranus, so it can be striking, unexpected, but it can also respond to stuff that are unexpected. This means that it's very difficult and even impossible to surprise Israel. Okay, and again, this is not about patriotism. I did not say that Israel is always right. I just said that strategically, if you would looking at this, and let's say you were the opponent of Israel, you're looking at the chart where Mars is separating from a sextile to Uranus, you understand that this is not the country you want to play scare shows with suddenly and sudden predict. Like, they're going to respond to your suddenness quite quickly. They're going to jump back quite quickly, and also they are not surprised, which tells us that both in 1973 and in 2023, they were not surprised, which actually adds to the atrocity, because there are people waiting in the villages for the army to come. And I'm not blaming here the army, because we understand there's something different here that Israel is dealing with. And this Mars is trining Jupiter, so there's a lot of optimism in our ability to win, which actually supports winning every time, or when Israel wants to conquer a land, It's going to conquer land. But then the midheaven is on Procyon. So this means that the legacy for Israel is actually not about being an empire or something like, people are afraid that we're going to be like Hitler. When it comes to the midheaven, although they are revolutionary, they are reactionary, they are fundamentalist forces, these Jupiters opposing Uranus. But when it comes to our midheaven, what we came here to do, what the legacy here, is actually not to be this grand empire that conquers land or that does, stupid things to the world and then poof. Actually, Israel life mission as a country is to serve as a mediator for peace, to avoid nuclear damage, to avoid war. Okay, Israel is consistent to avoid war more so than to create it. Doesn't mean that she doesn't create it. It means that when it's living her midheaven, that's what it's coming here to do. Okay, Procyon is the most peaceful planet in the sky. If Algol is the I don't want to mess with that planet in the sky, okay, when Algol gives defense, forget about it. Procyon, next to maybe only constellation of Andromeda, is the most peaceful fixed star, and the midheaven of Israel is conjunct in it. You could say that this is an image of and this and that, but it's also midheaven. It's not just the image. Midheaven is genuinely the life mission. Why is Israel on the map? To do this. And Israel has to remember this. And now, when it comes to this Chiron, it means that if Israel finds it difficult, but it has to make an effort to contain its people who suffer from PTSD, and unfortunately, because it is Scorpio, also unfortunately sexual trauma. Okay, PTSD, CPTSD from sexual trauma, sexual abuse, gaslighting, financial abuse, all of these things. We have a Chiron retrograde there. It means that people tend to blame people for being victims, even if those people went and risked their life for your country. And now they came back from the war. They don't have a place to live. They don't have a work because they have, seizures of the trauma. Okay, that it's very difficult. They need rest, and they are being treated and castrated and treated as weak in society, as not patriotic, because some of them have secrets to reveal to us about stuff that perhaps if we wouldn't do, then we would be even better as an army, and psychological crisis following this war, and also people who deal with financial violence and with sexual violence are being mistreated here, and this hurts Mars. What is Mars? It's the army. It's our ability to be militarily competent. And when do we get it? When Chiron is in Aries, we get it, not when Chiron is in Scorpio. When Chiron is in Scorpio, we can tend to heal that. We can tend to suddenly see, that those people who have PTSD are people, and so on and so forth. So there is an ethos to the army, but because we are slacking in, tending to the psychological crisis, and unfortunately people also when they go to therapy, okay, I talked about it, I don't know what's energy, but also when they go to therapy, the therapist will make them feel the trauma again by traumatizing them. Okay, not about discussing this thing or it's going to traumatize them again. And this is used, unfortunately, to create trauma. My therapist literally told me, I know how to create trauma, not how to heal it. I want to say it again. I know how to create trauma, not how to heal it. Okay, he genuinely said that. Genuinely delivered this message to me. Okay, so you understand how deep wounded the people who go to fight for the country and the people who survived any type of scorpionic type of violence. And this is a wound in Israel that can downright terminate it, because this Mars, while it's very strong, is receiving this wounding, and this is what allows us to not respond to what we see. Because Israel is not surprised, but because we don't listen to the people who tell us that, then there is a gap between what Israel is capable of doing and what Israel is doing. Okay? This also means that now this Mars is ruling Aries and is ruling Rahu. So we are addressing the wound about the military forces and how we treat veterans and how we treat, people that went through violence. Because what happened after 1967, people realized that, hey, we are winning, there's no more need to fight, and we want to live. Enough, we've established the country, we want to live. And 1973 came and brought us a supposed image of, oh, look, no, but we have to live on the sword again. Maybe. And people were no longer eager to join the army because they wanted to live. It's like, hey, we've protected, we've built something here, now we want to enjoy it. How to enjoy the win? But did we tend to our marginalized societies, the victims of violence? That is what is bringing this thing, because Chiron is ruled by Mars, and Mars is ruling the army. Tend to this Chiron, understand that people are not to blame for the situation, that they have been traumatized by their army service, by a situation of financial violence, sexual violence, regardless of their gender, sex, and religion. And then we can go back to be this winning Israel, but it's not as winning Israel in the sense that we're going to have battles every now and then, because this Mars is very peaceful. Look at this Mars. This Mars is sextile in Uranus, so it's have sudden initiations, technology, startups. Okay, not even around weapon. Mars, Uranus. You think about Mars as war, but Mars is also ruler of innovation. And the Mars Jupiter, harmony, spiritual. Okay, when we're not just aggressive. We have a spiritual purpose. We will defend our boundaries if needed be, but we're not going to get into a fight for no reason. Look at this Mars. It's in Leo, but it's very peaceful. Okay, it's not a Mars that you can surprise. But it is not a Mars that will initiate a war for no reason. What this Mars does have is this square, this separating square from the Sun on Algol, which is where we get all these righteous wars, crisis, because the problem here is with identity. And again, it's turning to this Chiron. Okay, they have a problem with the identity. This Chiron opposing the Sun. There's a problem with the identity when a person is going through a crisis after a war. And if we tend to that, which we can, radically accept our Marses, radically accept that to be a warrior is also to cope with those traumas, and it doesn't make you weak. It means that you've seen certain things in the world that take time to process and that must be changed, and we have the power to change them. We have the power to change. This country has the power to change everything wrong that it sees. Everything wrong that it is. This country, it has the power to treat the homeless. It has the power to treat the people who went through violence. It has the power to treat lack of housing. It has the power to treat infrastructure and technology. It has the power to do anything that it wants. What it does need is to understand the issue of the identity. It doesn't make you weak if you survived violence. It doesn't make you weak, because we need to build infrastructure that allows you to make good choices in life, even if you went, let's say, through violence. And we can do it. We can do it better than most countries. This Mars that is initiation and action, trine in Jupiter means the instinct to do good is acted upon, and sextile in Uranus, it means that we can innovate here, we can find solutions that nobody thinks about and act on them and live very good. And then there is this separated aspect of the crisis with the sun, which is basically identity crisis around being a warrior. Okay, it is no joking matter. It is a reason that Israel has not addressed this before, albeit it's been so winning and so advanced and so progressed, because it is a matter of identity. It's an identity. The identity of the country is connected, is in crisis with the identity of its warriors, which is important to understand. But now this Mars is ruling Aries in Aries and is ruling Rahu. And so what is being asked of the entire world with Aries in Aries is not to think about how to keep the situation from going forward, but to find what do we like to go forward to, okay? This is a phase in humanity where we do have a trajectory, an enlightenment cycle. We are moving forward as to this segment in time. When Aries is in Aries now, with the eclipses, we are moving in forward direction. It's Mars ruled, it has a direction. It's not lunar, it's not cyclical, it's not Neptunian. Okay, when Aries was in Pisces, people were aspiring to the history, to the motherland, to mythical notions, and the nation state was shaped by these mythical notions, and to the mythical person. Okay, if Aries is asking what is the human being, then if she did do so in Pisces, then it was the Übermensch. Okay, Aries in Aries is like to be a human being. And Aries is asking, how do we treat the marginalized society? She's asking us to be rational and to be tolerant. And in praise of tolerance, you will not like all people. You will not like all, not all people will like you, okay? But to give the right amount of space in structure between you and that which you don't like, allow you to tolerate each other. If they're all nagging in your ears, you want to kill them. It's not because they're bad, they're just nagging. But if you have space, so much so that you can barely hear their nagging, then you can tolerate each other. And if you have the infrastructure into the claim that they have and find solutions that satisfy both of you, and they're going to be structural, they're going to be technological, then you can tend to that. And you can live in peace. The result is living in peace, okay? The peace in Israel is generated by space between people. So whenever Israel is doing something that is, if Israel is both in its own borders and outside, if Israel is doing something that's against making space for people to live, then it begins to have conflicts. And it begins to enter this cycle of repetitive violence that seems like very right violence because the response, but we must understand that our card, our way to reach this Procyon is by making place. The moon here is co-present with Mars and Leo, along with Pluto and Saturn. Structure that is peace, that allows for equal powers for the people to live. We cannot oppress people in tiny structures, both inland and abroad. It's not good for us. And there is an innovative solution. Every person deserves a space. What Hitler called Lebensraum, it was the Lebensraum on the account of somebody else, but we don't need to do this on the account of anybody. It's a living space, not on somebody else, to understand. Because this was also the pitfall of the United States that got it into a civil war, slavery, but also occupied lands from other people and so on and so forth. So this is a big issue, that the living space needs to be innovation of structure and space so that people are not nagging each other, that they can tolerate each other. And then this alleviates this identity crisis that we have around being warriors. You have to be strong, you have to be this, you have to be that. Nobody is all that strong. We all break sometimes. Mars rules army as much as it rules broken things. And you know, before the war happened this week, I had two knives in my kitchen that I just cut something with them and they broke. And I was like, why is knives breaking? Okay? I'm like, okay, Chiron in Mars, this square to Pluto, these knives breaking, I don't know. Okay? I'm not saying it was an omen to the war, but it's just, you know, Mars rules broken things, so broken weapon as well. It's a part of Mars. That something is broken is a part of Mars. If you are a warrior and you think that the fact that you broke is making you weak, no, it is a part of you being a warrior. Unfortunately, it is a crisis that is a part of being a warrior. It doesn't make you weak. It means you need to rest. It means that the radical acceptance of this place where Mars is also something broken and not just something perfectly is important. So what the strength points are, if we tend to respecting the people that we consider victim and include them, Aries, into society, and also understand that these people, whether it's the people who directly risked their life and fought for us, or the victims of abuse and violence, financial, sexual, ever since childhood, that are the result of these wars on soil. And when we understand they are entitled to live in fertile soil, even when they can't work, believe me, you don't want a person who is now supposed to be resting, working. You don't want, especially not in technology and high tech, which is what Israel is best in. And you understand how this Mars gets broken, huh? If rehabilitation is go to work, then it sounds reasonable. It's like, oh, when I have my own money, then I will be free. You just went through violence and you need to rest. And it is by giving yourself the time to rest that you get back into your body, and then you can decide on the right action and make a choice that is even better, and a choice that is in being able to see more choice. You know, there are the people who say there is always a choice. But for you to be able to see that, you need to be embodied, you need to relax. If you're constantly busy, you're not going to see the choices that you have. And so you're not going to be, that ability to make better choices will not be facilitated for you, because you will not see that they even exist. So to take responsibility is not to work your ass off, it's basically to rest when you need to rest. And if you can't rest because there's something there, and you understand that the work is a coping mechanism, but you're going to be more and more effective the more you can find rest within yourself. And the rest within yourself you find when you radically accept that you are not to blame for what happened to you. Validation, okay? The antidote to Mars is Venus. Venus is validation. You are valid even when your Mars is broken. On that basis, we can become a more whole nation and find innovative solutions, because they exist more so than we think they exist. Aries on our descendant is asking us to think about where we're heading, okay? It's being more inclusive, not being less inclusive. It's not about resisting the religious revolution. It's about venturing in with the new direction that is in the spirit of the Enlightenment, and more separation of state and religion, more inclusivity to those that were not able to work. This, if we get this biodiversity, allow us this inclusivity, then we outtake any Hitler. Because Hitler was busy with purifying the race. What do you need to do to purify the race? You need to sit in a bunker, you don't see the daylight, you don't communicate with other people, so your communication ability is not good. You become violent, you're always busy with cleaning, and you're not exposed to no pathogens, to no opinions, to no different types and different ways of doing things. Then you become stagnant and you die. And this is what happened to Hitler's regime within 5 years. Only 5 years. The opulence of the Übermensch held for 5 years and collapsed into itself. But if we learn from this that we need to purify the race, but it's just not going to be the Germans, it's going to be the Americans, it's going to be Israel, it's going to be the Pakistan, it's going to be this, that, it's going to have this pride in our tribe that marks the people on their skin so that they won't be kidnapped by the other tribe. We haven't learned anything. It's biodiversity that wins the game on the long run. That allows you to be sustainable, that allows you to make place. Because if you can travel to India and you can travel to Russia and you can travel to Pakistan, you can travel to America, there are different bacteria there. There are different social, economical and whatnot, ways to do things there. Then if you can build a house in each and every one of these places and have a vacation there, then if God forbid you need to live there for more than just this vacation, you will not die because you ate some, chutney. The Indians are not clean. They wash their bumhole with water. They don't just wipe up the shit and say, oh, we're done. They're not clean. It's when we are not used to these bacteria that we say, oh my God, they are so dirty, they are so clean, because we had a poisoning when we ate their food. And it's like, yes, of course, if you would travel there since you were a child, you would not have a problem. It's just different bacteria. It's biodiversity that wins the game. Israelis travel a lot. Okay? So, on a more global level, Aries and with Ru is asking us not to resist the changes that they are trying to make, but to initiate, to innovate the changes that we want to and still did not have. And to understand that if we tackle the dark side of Aries is ableism, because it thinks that, I am God, I can do everything. And there's nothing wrong with having positive optimism, but you can forget and neglect that not all people are currently able to do this. And this is the crisis that we see in Israel, but not only in Israel, when something is broken, the identity you feel broken or whatnot, it is a part of the process. And when you understand that, even when a person right now cannot work and cannot find the innovative solution, they need to rest, Venus, okay, eat something good, rest, balance between action and inaction, meditate and stuff like that is balancing Mars. And so when we get that, then we understand that if we are inclusive of the marginalized people in our society, first of all, they no longer stay marginalized. People who weren't able to get out of bed can run a marathon. This is how you get to the ableism, by inclusivity. It's radical acceptance that gives you the movement in your psyche. Because it's a phase in your life where you have to understand that you are valid even when something is broken within you. And then there is movement in this something broken. It doesn't stay broken. Mars is also movement. And with Aries, it can even move quickly. But if you have expectation, poof, it kills. It kills the process. It's difficult for even the person themselves to let go of the expectation. It's like, now you need to rest. Now you need to accept that this is the situation. And then you find movement within yourself and rediscover the joy of being active again. And Aries is here to teach us just that. The Übermensch is just a mensch. And sometimes we feel broken. Sometimes we're able to do stuff. Sometimes not so. Sometimes we know who we are. Sometimes not so. Sometimes we think rationally. Sometimes not so. And this is all human. And you deserve to be on fertile soil and eat good and live good and travel good, even when you're something broken inside you. That is in fact what heals it. And I know because I was in exile, homeless. And because I traveled, and because I met people, and because I found within me the place to still envision something different, then I got to a different point. And it doesn't mean that the people who weren't able to do so are to blame. No, because nobody told them that they perhaps should travel. Maybe they didn't have the leverage with them. They needed to rest and they couldn't. So they could no longer. Okay? It's not because they are weak. It's because of the structure. I had the privilege to change this, and it's structural changes that are needed. And it's also stigma and cultural changes that are needed. So for this situation, I said the topic of this episode is Israel is at war, but not with Palestine. And it's not a highly spiritual topic. It's a very real. Because right now, Israel is not exempt from the global transition to you will have nothing and be happy. If we don't house our people, Schwab will, but with a different agenda. If you don't feed your people and you think they are weak, or they said something not okay about the army, they served in the army. They know what they said. Oh, they don't deserve human rights. Okay, if you don't take care for their human rights, some terror organization will. But then the point is not to say, oh, we want to resist the changes that are coming, but we want to instigate the changes that we desire. Aries is very supportive of becoming more inclusive. Very, very supportive of because this is what she wants. And she is not, she stops at nothing to get it. To show us the point. But essentially, Aries is about, to be the Übermensch is simply to be ein Mensch. Okay, to be a human being. And this is where it stands right now. And on the internal level, it's more to the Aries side. Let's be more inclusive, as well as tend to this Chiron, and let's be, because now, yeah, we have a chance to do so, and understand that, Mars is about being broken in as much as it's about being active, and this is all a part of what Mars represents, and to hold a place for it physically, that the person can have a place for it when they are being well fed and being soiled up and step their bare foot on the soil and able to travel, okay? That is what makes a difference. That's the innovative way of dealing with these things right now. And it's a point to aspire to. When you say, I want this, always has more power than I don't want that. I don't want that is important. It's in saying no to what you don't want. But when you already have this, I want this, rather than that, or I want this, I want to go there. Think about when you have a child, and the child wants ice cream. So it cries, it cries, it cries, it cries, it cries. And then you show him a beautiful dog. It's like, oh, look. Then he goes into the beautiful doggy, hopefully, and they have good time, and who remembers the ice cream? Okay? It's not about, I don't want this, I don't do this, don't bring me back to the past, don't bring, okay. It's about, I see this future, and I'm taking actions, as I'm doing in this vlog, to set this goal. I want to go there. That is more exciting to me. This is where we shine. This is where we are in our power. Okay? Paradoxically enough, just when we radically accept ourselves, also when we are broken, is where we are in our power. And this is why we exist. And this is the reason to keep on existing, even more free, even more inclusive, even more innovative, and even more authentic and whole. So I hope you find this interesting beyond the, for those who are interested in, you know, the personal thing. And this is thing, nothing here talks about anything other than Israel when it's within itself, because this is the issue. Has always been. This is the chart of the country. So, and that is what we're dealing with and what we're attending to. If we house our people, Schwab will not have any attraction to any people around. And Israel has the ability to innovate and avoid even Schwabiness. Okay, this is a very potent chart in relation to these things. And there is a lot to derive from this chart that can definitely withstand Israel through the myriad of crises that it's going through right now, for its identity, for its civil society. But the world in itself is becoming actually more secular. And the question is, will we be biodiverse? Will we be inclusive? Will we understand that to hold space for ourselves when something is broken, without believing that the person is no longer entitled to food, to life, to soil, to whatnot? This is the change that we are making. And people, even people who suffered from psychic attack or schizophrenia, when they were in the environments, you can see in Finland, they were in the environments, they were getting their housing, they were getting the V for victory, V for validation. Victory is achieved by validation. Okay, it's the Venus that backs Mars up with validation. And that is how you become victorious. This is why it's so important to treat also women well. Also at war, whether it's towards the enemy or towards inland. Very, very important. And also the women, if you treat women well, you treat also the woman inside the man well. And now the conflict is mitigated. Isis is very much associated with Procyon, which the midheaven in Israel is on. And Venus is in Cancer. Okay? But Israel has to understand that the woman has a place in Israel also when she's not a mother. And when she is a mother, she has a place as a mother. She needs to be assisted, she needs to be helped, not to be left to her own devices and have her children kidnapped from her. Okay? So, but because of the trine between Jupiter and Mars, even though retrograde, and Mercury and Neptune, Israel has the power to uncover the global pandemic of kidnapped children. Think about the story of the kidnapping of the Yemeni children. Yes, they try to cover it up now, and why would they try to cover it if they're not doing it more and more? But only in Israel did we have the exposure of children being kidnapped. It's happening globally. Okay? So you must understand this too. It's not a local issue. Every country is a study case for something that's happening internationally. We're all a part of the conglomerate. So I hope this was useful. And when we talk about people of Palestinian origin, again, the right Mars and Venus, and the notion that respecting women, the V of victory is achieved by the V of validation. It's V for validation. Okay, the V of victory is achieved for the V for validation. It's when your women are validated, they have the power. See, I saw it also in organized crimes in Arabic society. There were a lot of women that were murdered because they did not agree to marry, or they ran away from an abusive husband. They were murdered and buried in the sands in the Negev region where I live. And people did not make a havoc in the Arab society to change that. And so men began to be murdered at similar rates. Men were murdered within the society. Okay, I'm not talking about Palestinian conflict, not talking about Israel. Arab people murdering Arab people in rates that you cannot even believe. The V of victory is the V of validation. You must treat the Venus well, because then you become victorious. Because what does the woman do? It will validate you in return. And then you have a drive. Also, when you validate a woman, then she has a drive. Now you're working together. And when you're working together, when Mars and Venus working together, they're invincible. Nothing can come. Nothing can destroy. Nothing. It's union. And also for the Venus to validate, also when the Mars is broken, to validate. It's also the job of the Venus here. But the understanding that the V of victory is achieved by the V of validation. When people are fighting, like the Me Too era, when we understood that we are not to blame for what happened to us, we began to be victorious. We began to speak up against all odds and to all people. Because we validated each other, but also there were men that were validating us. Okay, sometimes it's the deceased father, sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's a dad. We all are victory to the men who validated us. It's just as much as men all the victory to the women who validated them and men who validated them. So it's one thing to take, and also for Palestinian people, okay, the V of victory is achieved by the V of validation. How you treat the women both outside and inside your society. This is the V of validation that is going to make you victorious. Because there is always a reason, okay? The desire to be safe on the land and to live in fertile, to set your foot on fertile soil and grow life is a good desire. It's the instinct to do good. And to act on this desire, we also need the validation, the Venus to, Muslim people, they kiss, not all Palestinians are Muslims, but they kiss the soil 5 times a day. Okay? It's not just about kissing the soil. It's about treating well everything that is that soil, is that motherland, is the mother, but it's also that womb and this containment and validation that they need. And this is important because she will desire to be validated also when she's not a mother, also when she's single, also when she desires to have sex with another person. And you want this too. Don't forget, you want this too. She's not stupid. She needs to be validated also when she's sensual. It's going to make you actually having more passion, more drive. In the beginning, you feel broken about this, and you have to validate yourself that you're broken about this, but it has movement there. And it's true to everybody, both Jewish people, Christian people, atheist people, Palestinian people. It's the understanding that you kiss the soil 5 times a day for a reason. If you kiss the soil, but you do not respect the woman, the soil is feeling mistreated by you, okay? If you can get that, it doesn't matter what tribe you are, wherever in the world, if you kiss the soil but you do not respect the woman, then the soil is feeling abused by you, and the soil will not be abused. So And when you treat the woman well, then you respect also the woman inside the man. And this is where you become victorious. You don't need to be violent to be winning. It's a different kind of win that a lot of people did not know yet. And this is progress. So, with this I'll end.